Hey, neighbors, it has been a little bit. Thank you so much for joining us at Neighborhood Comics here in Savannah, Georgia. My name is Lee. I'm the shop owner, and I will be your host today. A little bit about what's going on in the shop these days. You can join us on Sunday evenings at 5:30 Eastern for our Pop Shop live shows. Those are a lot of fun. If you think about it, it's like QVC, but I'm selling comic books. It's that. So it's a lot of fun. We have a blast. We call it our Lazy Sunday show. So it's a no pressure sales show. This week, we are going to be having, specifically, we're going to be doing a lot of slabbed graded books. So it should be a lot of fun for higher end collectors, but we always have dollar books and fun stuff and everything in between as well. I also, for our locals, want to encourage you to stop in the shop in person for our Artist in Residence program. Victor Alpe is here all the month of June working on comic books here in the shop. It's a really cool chance to see someone hone their craft, work on projects. Victor is working on a creator-owned Western right now, and he's already done like 5 or 6 pages this month so far. So it's really cool to watch. He'll be penciling and inking actual, physical pages here in the shop, which is a blast. If you are a local creator that is interested in participating in our Artist in Residence program, you can go to neighborhoodcomics.com. You can find a link there for the application. We're currently taking applicants for the summer months. So we're taking applications July through September right now. So we're looking forward we've gotten some amazing applications so far, but there's still time. And we will, if this continues to be successful, keep booking it out as long as artists want to do it and as long as people want to come see them make their art, which is really cool. Today is Wednesday. Wednesday is a new comic book day. A ton of new stuff out this week. Really great books. For those of you who are looking to fill holes in your collection or pick up key books, we bought 4 collections today. So we have a lot of books that we're going to be pricing and putting out in the back issue bins, on the shelves, and up on the wall over the next week or so. We'll be doling that out. As always, for our scheduled live shows, we have a special guest. And today's special guest is very special to me and to the store. Tracy Yardley is perhaps best known for his work on the Sonic the Hedgehog series for Archie and now IDW. Tracy was here on our opening day on May the 4th, 2019, here on 1205 Bull Street. Signing and sketching for Free Comic Book Day, and has been a wonderful supporter of our shop from day one. And he is one of our, local artists that when I talk to tourists who stop in, or even like locals who just ask about, oh, wow, you have local works by local comic artists. When I mention Tracy and his work on books like Sonic and Cosmo, people's eyes just light up. They can't believe that someone who lives right here around the corner, close to Savannah, Georgia, works on a title like that. And I think it's really, really cool for people to see and to know that there is a local hand at play and in a book, in a character, in a franchise that they love and they really care about. So without further ado, I will introduce friend of the store, the amazing Tracy Yardley. He's coming in, and 3, 2, 1. There he is. It's magic. Hey, Tracy, how's it going?
Hi. How you doing?
Good, man. I like how we're going to pretend like we didn't just see each other in person today.
That's right.
I was so close just saying, hey, man, we'll do this in person. We'll do a real thing. But coming out of this past year, I'm still so I don't want to put anybody out of their comfort zone and do whatever. But it was great to see you in person today and to show you hard copies that you were so nice to sign right over here. We got signed copies of Sonic number 40 from Tracy right here in the shop. So
even after all these years, it's really cool to see my book on the shelf. I like it. Yeah.
Oh, that is so when you for this book, have you gotten printed comps yet, or do you usually get printed comps for the books?
Yeah, I usually do. Just the issues that I work on with
Yeah, of
IDW.
course.
Archie used to send me literally everything they printed, which was pretty cool. I got to read all their books. But yeah, I usually get comps of the issues that I work on.
Yeah, have you gotten number 40 already, or was today the
No,
first chance to see those?
I have not gotten that one yet. No, they usually do come in. I think they come in a little bit early normally, but I'm sure their schedule is probably mixed up with recent events. I'm sure. So.
Well, yeah, there are lots of things we can give people credit for getting by over the past 15, 16, 18 months. Who knows how long? Who knows how long it's been at this point? And this issue in particular has been delayed a couple of times. And I was looking back through our message thread. I think we talked like in April about this book. I mean,
it's been a while, yeah.
So. It has been coming down the pipe. So I'm excited that it's here. Sonic number 40, Tracy contributed the cover for the A cover. So if you're picking that up in your local shop or here, that's Tracy's iconic Sonic work, who he has a long history of developing for two publishers, and which is really cool. But before we get knee deep into Sonic, we won't get that deep into Sonic if you're not. We're going to talk about other stuff too. I always like to hear artists and creators talk about their origin story, when it was that they first got introduced to the concept of comics. And there are so many different ways to interpret what a comic is that I don't want to lead you too terribly much. But do you have a memory of when you were younger and in being exposed to comics in some way?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was never in my youth really into comic books per se. I didn't read a lot of like X-Men or things like that. Really, when I was little, I always enjoyed reading the newspaper comic strips. Peanuts and Garfield and stuff like that. But I mean, of course, obviously, like most people, my favorite of all time is Calvin and Hobbes. It was a fantastic piece of work that really showed what a newspaper strip could be. The depth of the humor and just the range of what Waterston could do with the art and the storytelling, and the sophistication of the jokes and stuff was really far beyond most anything else you'd see in the newspaper then or now. So
I think that's really true. And of course, like you, I saw Calvin and Hobbes in the newspaper and the Sunday edition, getting to see it in color and all that great stuff. But it really wasn't until I sat down with the collections where I really it kind of washes over you that was really telling this much larger story in this 3 to 5 panel format for years and years and years. And he is one of those newspaper cartoonists that I feel like really translates well to a collected volume, to pick up and just be able to see how, when he's writing with like the snowball stories, like how that really develops over weeks and months, and then revisits a year later and it becomes like all these recurring themes. That's a great example of a real sequential storytelling, because it's, like you said, 5 panels of here's the setup, here's the punchline, but the emotional investment comes once you've gotten 3 or 4 weeks in and you're like, oh, I like these kids and I like what's happening here and I kind of get it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Of course, like you say, when you go back and read him in the very last collection that he put out, which obviously I'm sure he knew that he was wrapping up.
Yeah.
So a lot of the themes and ideas, like with Calvin hating Susie and being antagonistic toward his babysitter and stuff, he would kind of throw some little twists and turns and some sort of conclusions to some of those things. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, obviously, newspaper strips have told sequential stories forever. I mean, Spider-Man shows up in the newspaper strips, and it's probably still going, I would assume.
Still written by Stan Lee somehow.
Yeah. Dick Tracy and Prince Valiant and all those things. They tell stories over time. But as far as like the funny joke type comics, I think Calvin Hobbes did it probably best.
Which is really like from, we're close-ish in age. You're a little bit younger than I am, but so we have probably a lot of common touchstones, especially when it comes to pop culture and what was in print. But I feel like some of that real classic, like you said, your Prince Valiants, your Phantoms, even your kind of like romance strips or your office strips or any of those other kind of, they had really kind of fallen out of favor by the 80s and 90s. And a lot of them were still going almost like out of entropy. But, my generation, I think of being the rise of your Garfields and you're like, you're real kind of, okay, I see what you're doing. Real. And I loved it. I ate that stuff up. And I, as a kid, bought those Garfield books that were the long books to mimic the newspaper strips. What a crazy format to think about now with all of our, regular trim size graphic novels and stuff.
Well, there's always going to be some oddball sized books out there.
Always. And so was your family like a newspaper subscriber family that showed up at your house, or was it something they just picked up on occasion, or what was how?
Yeah, I don't really recall, but we would almost always have the Sunday paper usually. Yeah. We'd pick it up at some point, so that would always have the color strips in there. And those usually where you would see the Prince Valiants and things like that. They would still be in the Sundays, even though they wouldn't be in the dailies. I don't know how many papers still print comics these days. I haven't picked up a newspaper in forever, and I don't think too many people do. So,
a nice divestment of personal responsibility for the death of journalism.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah. No.
Who has the time to sit and read? We can listen to NPR or something. So.
Absolutely right. That idea. It was such an interesting time, and it lasted for a really long time. And I only know because I've got some friends who still pitch strips to like United Feature or whatever, that are involved with that type of syndication, that it is still around, but it is so much smaller than,
I'm sure.
Yeah. There's not as many papers that carry them. And then when they do, their budget is so much lower, and they're just, I can, relicense a Peanut strip from 50 years ago. Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And those hold up.
A lot of them do. Yeah. And that's why it's still around for 70 years, One of the ones I liked, I discovered a little later on, was that Foxtrot by Bill Amend. And I know I follow him on Twitter, and he has his own website where he puts out his own news strips. I don't know. I'm assuming he's probably still syndicated, and however many newspapers will have him. So, but as long as he can do it and, put it out there in his own terms, that's great. I've considered doing that sometimes, but
hey, all right,
strips, but I'm just kind of too busy to develop and write it. And
I talked to you already. You are so busy.
Yeah, like one of the things that like I said, going back to your original question about why I got into comics, I tried, like in high school or middle school or so, to pick up some of those books like X-Men and stuff like that, but they were so just mired in continuity. I had no idea what was going on, so I really couldn't get into it. I liked the art and I appreciated what they were, but I just I couldn't get into it because I just didn't know what was going on, which is, I'm sure, still a problem today.
100%. If you thought the X-Men were complicated in the 80s and 90s, it has gotten worse. But there's also been a lot of activity to try to consolidate things and to try to bring new readers in, and all the things you have to do. And I think that is really difficult with character-based, story-based, long-form storytelling, where you have all of these different writers and creators over the years contributing to this lore, and passionate fans who don't want any of it discounted. So it is, this constant building and rebuilding. And with X-Men, they've done a really interesting job of kind of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I hate that phrase, but it's like, we're not going to just forget everything that ever happened and start over from scratch.
Comics is a strange, storytelling medium. because we have these characters that, ostensibly have a limited lifespan. They are young people and then grow old and die or whatever. But they,
you
they
haven't
stay
been
the
reading
same
X-Men
age.
recently,
No.
Tracy.
I know. Well, they stay like, Superman, Batman have been around for 70 years, and if time went by like it does in the real world, they'd be old men or dead by now.
Always 32 years old.
Yeah, but
Yes.
there's, with reboots and, stories of multiverses and stuff, it's a perfectly fine way of retelling the same story just from a different angle. So that's great, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, of course. It's a good way for, new creators and new fans to rediscover and re-experience something that they enjoy in a new context, over and over again. So
I'm a big fan of the idea of kind of getting rid of master continuities. DC this year recently did something kind of like that, where they have decided that, so many of the books that have just been going on and on and on, there's really no reason to to bring a new person onto Batman or whatever. Everybody knows what happened to Batman. We don't need to see those pearls fall again. But instead, what if Batman happened 50 years from now? Or what if, so DC kind of is now this like extended chain of all timelines are valid. If there's something you like, yeah, it happened. But if that was not something you grew up with, yeah, this character is different now, and they have a different backstory, and they have whatever, and it drives some diehards crazy. But honestly, the biggest thing holding like mainstream comics back has been the willingness to sacrifice some things for new readers. And so I am always on board. Oh, we're doing this character different now? Great. Fantastic. It's a new way for somebody else to jump on board. And with diversity of creators, diversity of character designs, they're really encouraging non-traditional comics readers to see themselves in the storytelling. And that's the only way this stuff keeps going, is if we keep making the lore bigger.
Yeah, because everybody wants to enjoy Batman or Superman or whatever.
Yeah.
And if there's a way to tell that story for, a new audience, then go ahead. It's funny that the concept, as I mentioned a minute ago, about multiverses, that seems to be a really useful tool for doing that,
Well, Miles Morales, the biggest breakout star. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That movie was huge. It might not have made the box office compared to the other live action films.
Yeah.
But in terms of, critical success, it was,
huge.
A huge hit. Yeah. And then stylistically, it's fantastic. Story was great.
It is the closest thing I've ever seen to a comic book on the screen. Of course it's animation, but the kind of reverence for comics Into the Spider-Verse has, with the Ben-Day dots and the kind of page flip transitions. It was really, seeing that on the big screen was really cool, because I was like, this is only going to make people want to learn more about Miles and Gwen and all this expanded universe.
Sure, yeah. Well, and then they had the PS4, PS5 game, Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I'm sure probably wouldn't have come out without the success of that film.
Right.
And again, same thing. Any ancillary media is just going to want to make people go and find out more about the character and read the books and stuff, so they can, because you can't have a PS4 in your hands on the bus all the time. You can bring a comic book with you. So
I love that. That'll be the pull quote. You can't take the PS5 on the bus, but you can take a comic book. Tracy Yardley.
Sure.
100%. Yeah, but these characters are flexible, and that's why these archetypes have existed for, we're coming up on some pretty big anniversaries. We just passed 80 for a lot of these, like, even second tier heroes. I'm calling the Flash or Green Lantern second tier. Don't come at me, bros. But so we've got, in our lifetimes, we will be coming up on 100 years of Superman, and these crazy milestones to kind of think about how they have continued to exist, and they wouldn't have done that without being flexible, without being willing to change, without being willing to have different people take on these mantles and do these things.
Sure. It's no doubt that, I mean, like, storytelling is one of mankind's cornerstone, defining traits. We love to tell stories. We like to hear stories. And it's funny, with our modern society, how quickly things move, how they change. You know, um, it'll be interesting to see, 100 years hence, whether Superman or Batman or these
Yeah.
various characters will still be in, the modern or the popular canon of storytelling. Will they be the next King Arthur and Robin Hood and those things that will be retold throughout the ages? And of course, like I said, with those characters, like King Arthur, Robin Hood, that's probably a lot more of a spoken word sort of tradition of storytelling until more modern times with printing and things. But life just moved at a slower pace back then. So those characters, while I'm sure they changed and evolved over time, you know, not nearly as quickly. Things didn't change in the olden days as quickly as they do now. So it makes perfect sense that our characters and our stories these days will change and adapt and morph into new things much, much quicker. So, who's to say
Yeah.
what will continue? And like, once again, I'll bring up that multiverse thing because you see that all the time. And I almost kind of lamented a little bit.
I know, right? Yeah.
It's every single franchise seems to be doing that multiverse thing. And again, because it's such a useful, versatile tool for telling different versions of the same thing. So,
And it for a long time, it was a gimmick. It was, hey, the world with an evil Superman, or it
yeah,
was whatever. But now I feel like the vehicle which it's seen through is not as much gimmick based. I mean, come on, these are comic books. We got gimmicks. I can show you a wall full of gimmicks any day of the week. But they're using it in a really interesting way to, I think, hopefully expand the readership. Getting books in front of people, especially kids. And that's how this, if we don't hand this down to our kids, it dies with us, right?
sure, yeah,
And so, but talking about those, especially like early comics, like characters like the Phantom or like Dick Tracy, that really have not kept the mind share of popular culture. How things can sort of atrophy and have. I grew up a huge Lone Ranger fan. I like watching the old serials that were back on TV, like on the UHF channels. And like Dynamite puts out a Lone Ranger book every now and then, but I can't imagine it's for a large print run.
No, it's really
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, too. Yeah, we were some friends of mine. Plug. Here's a shameless plug here. We are
Do
doing.
it.
We're working on building a new YouTube series that is called Drawing Conclusions, where my friends Nate Bowden and Steve Weitz come up with a pretty well universally known comic character, like for example Beetle Bailey.
Yeah.
Although how universally well known is Beetle Bailey actually these days?
These days, yeah.
People your age and my age, that's a pretty well known comic book character.
Hagar the Horrible, Andy
Exactly.
Cap, like,
Exactly. Yeah, these comic strip characters that were in the 1980s and 90s pretty well universally known. But are they now,
Blondie,
20, 30
goodness.
years hence, are they still really that well known? So the gist of the show is that they come up with a character, and then I have to try to draw it out of my memory without any reference to see how closely I can remember how these characters look, and it's actually turning out to be a lot of fun. So
I love that. John Larison joining us. Yeah, John contributed, not anymore. In terms of the popularity of some of those characters we were just talking about. John, of course, a professor at SCAD and a good friend of the shop. Yeah, sad. I mean, these characters have had, and those that we just kind of riffed on from the newspaper syndication world, had long lives. Like this was. I feel like those were not new when we were coming up, like our parent, it was a different, because you shared kind of those newspaper strips with the adults in a really interesting way too. Because of course, while they're checking the sports scores and the weather and, the whatever news of the day, the parents are reading the cartoons too. It's part of the package. And so you could talk to your parents or your siblings or whatever about that. And it was very multi-generational in a way that a lot of other kind of content isn't,
Yeah, sure, of course. It's when a comic spans 30, 40, 50, 60 years of relevance in a newspaper or whatever environment. Yeah, your parents are going to have read that, and then you'll see it too, like Blondie or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, as we said, because with the death of print newspapers, it's really not so much a thing anymore. My kids, I guarantee you, they don't know who Blondie is.
No.
They don't know who Dagwood is.
Dagwood.
They couldn't tell me who Beetle Bailey is. I guarantee it. They don't know.
I keep trying to convince my kid to call like sandwiches Dagwoods and stuff. And she's like, no, that's not what we call them, Dad. John says,
they wouldn't know why you would call them that either.
Yeah,
so, and that speaks right back to the point about, modern storytelling and using this multiverse tool to continually rejuvenate things like Superman and Batman. Otherwise, like Dick Tracy, he's still probably...
Yeah, Dick is probably still being published right now. Honestly, it's probably still out there and is in the zeitgeist. Tracy's going to be right back with us. We'll make sure he finishes that thought. Dick Tracy is one that like I really often kind of am like, really the idea of Dick Tracy, this detective in a yellow coat and a hat, and all of his villains are just, like Hammerhead or whatever they are. Like it's also like early Batman villains, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I might probably dropped out there for a second.
You're good. I vamped. I expertly talked about Dick Tracy.
My internet connection isn't perfect, but my point was that he's kind of mired in 1940s.
Yes.
He is a product of his time.
He was not reinvented in that way.
Yeah, and I mean, there's certain characters that he certainly could be modernized, updated, or whatever, but I don't think anybody's made that effort. He had a movie in whatever it was, 89, 90.
Warren Beatty.
Around there, yeah.
Yeah, who, from what I understand, still has, like, his production company has the rights to it, and like most of these things, every so many years, you have to show that you're still working on it to keep the license. So he keeps like releasing new versions of the script, like every 5 or 6 years of the sequel to the 1980s Dick Tracy movie, just to keep it in his wheelhouse, which I think is hilarious.
And even then, I only watched that just recently, actually. And
does it hold up?
I would say mostly no. Yeah, it seems fairly dated and not particularly sharp or, engaging.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but again, that's, in 89 or whatever year that came out, the people who would have seen Dick Tracy in the papers as children would have been in their, middle to middle age. And that still would have been pretty relevant for them. And I'm sure they would have loved seeing that on the screen. But without updating these characters and keeping them relevant, nobody's going to care about Dick Tracy these days. And again, he's mired in 1940s. And unless there's some sort of general widespread resurgence in 1940s culture, then he's not going to be relevant unless you update him. Now, there's other characters like Sherlock Holmes, who isn't really a comic book character per se, but he is one of the first characters to have a fandom and a canon and things like that, And he is, he's easy to modernize. They've done it multiple times just in recent years, and he's a versatile character. There was even a cartoon of him in the 24th century or something like that, I think, right? So yeah, he's more of he's an even more broad archetype, detective character who can be slotted into different things, and that could be said for Batman and Superman. Although they have their specific gimmicks, they're not necessarily tied to any particular period of time, so they can be thrown into any environment, any there's Elseworlds Batman stories where he's in the medieval times and stuff like that. So sure, why not?
And I think there is a fun kind of bringing on different creators with that too. I think a lot of our newspaper strip kind of archetypes are tied so specifically to their original creator, where it's not the fresh blood coming in necessarily, or if it is ghost artists or if it is other people coming in, they're giving a very tight parameters of the stories that they're allowed to tell, like keeping it on canon and in years and all of that. John Larison in the chat saying that really with the death of this kind of strip newspaper strip. What we've got now is webtoons, where people are publishing their episodic works online. A lot of self-publishing goes on. But webtoons is a huge industry. A friend of the shop, Aria, is an editor there, and there's a ton of resources and ways for exposure for artists of all different levels at a webtoons, which is very different. And also that idea of kind of a shared consciousness of characters, John mentioned, that has shifted a lot to even things like video games, where our generation and our kids and the generation in between, we still, and we grew up with video games, and we still, I personally, gosh, that Breath of the Wild, the Zelda game, it brings me so much joy. and there are lots of other games like that, that we have this kind of character canon, or with The Last of Us, or with any of Mass Effect, these big games that cross over. Those end up being some kind of shared experience with characters and intellectual property, as the so gross word for it is. So what about you? Are you in that world? We'll talk about Sonic in a second, but that was going to be way too natural of a transition into Sonic for me to let that lie. But are you a gamer at all? Do you have a hand in that world?
Oh yeah. Well, I have tons of video games. I kind of like just collect the games, and I don't play them because I don't have time to. I've got many handheld and console devices. I've got literally hundreds of games that I just don't play because I don't have time. But I'd love to. Occasionally I'll sit down and play, and I really enjoy that. I love video games. I think they're not exactly in the same wheelhouse as sequential art comics per se, but there's a lot of shared things. They are told generally in a sequence. You experience them, the ones that time, like everything is. But
the ones that I love tell a story. Not that I don't like puzzle games and whatever else too. That's definitely what I grew up with. But the ones that I'm really drawn to, I can get to a conclusion and I can get there on my own terms. So it's a little bit like a choose your own adventure story or whatever.
Sure.
But then ultimately they're all plotted out.
Yeah, I like the RPGs and things like that. Or like you mentioned Zelda. It's there's a rudimentary story there. I think that's really what's at the core of it, though, is that there's some sort of story that you are putting yourself into. Comics is a story that's laid out for you. You read it and discover things as you go, but you don't have a hand in what happens. And video games, have that unique power to put us into the story. You are, even though again, there's a limited move set and there's predetermined goals a lot of the time for you, but you still have the sense, regardless of how real it is, you have the sense that you are in the game helping make the decisions and progressing the world. So it's a little more interactive, and as long as there's a story there, you get the same satisfaction of discovering things and being part of a story being told, which again, it's very fundamental to what we are as humans. We love stories. We all have stories, and sometimes ours are boring, and we need to have a little more fun and adventure.
For me, it's really like the video game. It's the video games that I love anyway are this kind of bridge in between comics and movies in a really interesting way, because with prose novels, everything is there, but you see it all in your mind. With comics, you get to kind of fill in what happens between the panels. So there's activity there that you as the reader get to kind of put into the story yourself, even though that panel's not there. And then of course with movies, they literally show you everything. You just get to be there and be the dumb terminal receptacle and take everything in, as beautiful as that is. So there's a nice continuance, and video games for me give me that little bit of in between, that there's a story and it's all here, but I kind of get to see what's in between the panels. Like I get to kind of actually see that transition between A to B. I get to physically go to that place, and
Sure.
you know, that in a comic might just be glossed over, you know, with a little caption of the next day. You know,
Yeah, and I like games that have the reading component. I know a lot of
yeah,
games do have voice acting, and that's great. But I kind of prefer the ones that have the reading component to it
I
because
do
it's a
too.
little more like a comic. You know,
I
it's
do
like
too.
you get to engage with it that much more. So you know, yes, you're right. Very much a bridge of comics and movies, kind of a melding of the two that you get to move your own character through. So, and
So
I like puzzles and I like the
yeah.
visuals. I like, you know, I love to see all the different visual styles that these artists come up with for the games
Good
and stuff, you
art
know.
is good art. I don't care if it's on a
Mhm.
canvas or in a video game or in a comic book. Good art just transcends all of that. And it's wonderful. We're in an era now where technology is allowing people to make like really, really exceptional, not good for the platform, but like seriously exceptional art in these
Mhm.
different genres. But so we talked about, so your exposure to comics, newspapers, I had a lot of that same sort of thing growing up. Did you have a local, like growing up, did you have a comic shop or a place that you could see physical printed comics like on the regular?
Um, Sort of, yeah. I mean, I've lived in a little small town in the middle of nowhere, Illinois.
Yeah,
But there wasn't a comic shop, but there was in those days, you could still go into the grocery store or the drugstore and there would
100%.
always be comics on the spinner rack.
Yep.
So that's where I would see my comics, you know.
Same.
There was a grocery store and a drugstore next to each other, and they both had comics in them. So if one didn't have it, the other one probably would, whatever
Nice.
you're looking for. And of course, you know, here transitioning into Sonic here, that's
Ah,
where I picked up my first issue of Sonic.
really? Wow.
Yeah. The local drugstore had the Archie initially in 90, I guess either very late 92 or early 93. They put out their initial 4-issue miniseries. The
Wow.
first 3 issues were drawn by Scott Shaw, who you know, worked on Captain Carrot and various other things for Marvel. You know, he's a funny animal cartoonist, and that's his shtick. And
Yep.
he signs his name with the exclamation point at the end, and I stole that directly from him. That's
No,
what
really? What a
yeah,
great! I had no idea. I've always loved that you did that, and I always I kind of nerd out a little bit on how artists, you know, because you sign a lot of stuff, right? You know, and so being able to come up with your little thing, whether it's a little, you know, like if it's your initials in a box, or you know, like
Mhm.
a slight little small kind of inside remark, or you know, just even just the full name or whatever. So I've always loved the exclamation point in your signature, because I always associate the stuff that you do as being really fun, you know? And so it's always like,
Thanks.
boom, you know, like it's a little that punch on the end. And I never would have known had you not told me that came directly. That's Sonic canon. That's lore.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I mean, the Sonic comics and the video games. Yeah, again, you know, I think in like 1991,
Yeah,
my brother got the Genesis packed in with Sonic the Hedgehog
of course.
for Christmas, and I ended up playing it a lot more than he did. You know, I fell in love with the Sonic games, and I, you know, for the next few years, begged my mom to, you know, always buy them for me and saved up my lunch money to get them and stuff like that. So you know, and I've always been a fan of Sonic games, and I've read the Sonic comics off and on since they've you know, began. I think I started with issue like 1 or 2 of the miniseries, and then I went back and hunted down the other, like issue 0 that came out first.
Nice.
Um, and I had those for a long time. I kept them for many years. A few years ago, I think I sold all my big set of Sonic books, you know, just to kind of make some room in my closet, you know.
You don't need
And
everything. It's
yeah,
a very grown up decision.
yeah, you know, give them to some other fan that's going to enjoy them and look at them more than I would. You know, I mean, they're nice to have, but I don't necessarily need to keep every single
Yeah.
thing. So, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the very few comics that I actually went out of my way to buy. You know, comic
Wow.
books.
Did
Uh,
you ever, like, for those early Sonic games, especially that first one? I mean, it was such a game, the physics of that game in particular, like how the character moved and interacted with the environment, and it broke so much ground. Were you like a completionist? Did you like play the game through to the end, or were you more casual and like, oh well, this is
oh, I
fun, but
I play the games pretty obsessively, I'd say, all the way in middle school and most through high school. Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Sonic in particular, and largely because they're generally fairly easy compared to some other things
correct.
like 2D Mario Brothers, old classic Mario Brother games. I'm terrible at those most of the time. Mega Man, I can't play that to save my life. They're really really difficult. My brain works a little better with like the 3D.
Yeah.
Whenever Mario 64 came out, I was, that's a little bit more my thing, the three-dimensional games. But Sonic is, it's pretty much, one button, jump, spin dash, run forward. So that's not to say that there aren't some complicated platforming sections in there, here and there, but.
And isn't that first 3D Sonic game like historically bad? Is that the one that's like people just?
I wouldn't say it's bad. I recall playing it for the first time, and I kept over and over. I would say like weird every time some new gimmick would show up. It's like this is really weird, and it, yeah. I mean,
it was of its time, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like
sure,
limited in what you could do. And
99, 2000, I think when Sonic Adventure came out, and
yeah,
pretty. I'm sure good for the time. Not the cleanest or best presentation ever of a video game. But I mean, it's it is a lot of fun to be had in it, and it's definitely a classic, in its own right. But yeah, with the original, the old classic games, I played the heck out of those. I would do the little level select in Sonic 1 and go straight to the end and beat it,
nice.
beat the last boss, so I can see the end credits where Sonic jumps up and he does the finger in the camera, and I was so good at Sonic 2. At a certain point, I could in the first level of the game, Emerald Hill Zone in Sonic 2. The mechanic was that you could get 50 rings, find the star posts, go to the special zone, and run through the half pipe thing to get a Chaos Emerald, right?
Yeah.
So you could do that multiple times in each level, so as long as you could find 50 rings, which would reset every time you got an emerald, and find another star post and do another course. I got so good that I could get all 7 of the Chaos Emeralds in zone or act 1 and 2 of the Emerald Hill Zone. So yeah, that's how good I got at that.
Wow.
I don't think I could do it again nowadays.
I don't know. A lot of that muscle memory is for real. Like I've been doing a lot of retro gaming with my kiddo, and some of that just really comes back fast. Like you don't even realize you're doing it because you did it.
Maybe,
when your brain was still really soft, you were doing that over and over again. And
sure, yeah. The real key was the memorizing the patterns of the rings in the different special zone half pipes, because you didn't have a lot of leeway for mistakes. You had to get them pretty good.
I love it. I'd love to think that you would be playing these retro games online now and be like ranked. Like, oh, the guy who actually like does Sonic for his job is actually like a ranked Sonic player. But
that's really funny too. As I've seen discourse on Twitter and various places from friends of mine online that discuss and even do journalism for retro gaming and things. And like that's one of the things they kind of lament is the ranking system. Like in the more modern games, it's like, why do you have to have a rank? Just play the game and have fun. Don't worry about it. If you get the rings and you get to the end of the zone, that's good enough. It should be. But anyway.
Well, I mean, they're the system rankings that everybody can see, but for the retro games, like there's a whole community like where you can play on Steam or whatnot and see like how fast people can get through games, like speed run and all that. Anyway, it's crazy. But so you were picking up books, including Sonic, as a youngster, which is really cool. And was there a time that you realized that is something a person could do for a job? Like they kind of differentiated, that's a character and this just comes out. And then you're like, oh, wait, like a human being works on this for their job.
No, yeah, it is a little strange to me to think that people don't understand how comics work in general. Yeah. However, I mean, even from, like I would say probably 6th grade was when I, maybe even 5th grade or so, 4th grade was when I really, realized that this is what I wanted to do. It's the only thing I've ever really wanted to do or been particularly good at. And it was drawing and doing comics or cartoons. And again, pretty specifically when I was a kid, I wanted to do like newspaper strips. And even
Hey, Tracy's going to be right back. You guys are so very patient. He's telling a very heartfelt story right now about this is all he ever wanted to do. And this is all he ever wanted to do. He's coming back into the video. And he's going to drop 5th or 6th grade.
There you go.
3, 2, 1. I think we're going to see him now.
Come on.
So there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
So
sorry about that.
No, all good.
But yeah, as I was saying, yeah, drawing newspaper strips was kind of what I always wanted to do, because that's what I knew and I liked, and I'm much more of a cartoonist, I would say, than a what you would think of as a traditional comic book artist, with the human anatomy stuff. That's the one area I've never worked hard enough at is practicing and memorizing human anatomy and comic book style anatomy stuff. I could put a lot more effort into that and do it more, but it's just not. It hasn't been my focus. Again, tying back to video games, is I like them. They're as big an influence on me, or perhaps even more, than comics in a lot of ways. As a little boy, I would draw like Pac-Man and the Ghosts and Mario Brothers and stuff out of the instruction booklets that came with games and things. So and Garfield, Ninja Turtles, all that kind of stuff. I would draw those cartoon characters that you would see on TV or in the newspaper. So that's what I was, more geared toward. And as I was saying, while I was in SCAD, they used to own a little local newspaper called The Guardian, I think it was, as I recall. And I had my strip in there during college. It was based on me and my friends from high school and my brother and stuff. It's called Life in the Fast Lane. And the joke was that we were losers who never did anything. It was the exact opposite. You get it. So.
Well, what brought you? So you mentioned SCAD. So you, as a 5th, 6th grader, you kind of got it in your wheelhouse that, okay, this is a career path. Like, I can do this. I put my nose to it and work it through. How did SCAD get on your radar as a place to go and study sequential art?
Well, I believe that I think they sent a pamphlet to the school at some point. Like one of their brochure, like a big book, like kind of a not just a brochure, but like a larger
course
book.
Guide kind of thing.
Yeah, just a thing detailing what the school was and all that. And one of the school counselors gave it to me. He's like, "Oh, this looks like a good place for you." And I said, "Yeah, it does," because at that point it was in high school, and I lived in Illinois, so I had considered the School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It being not terribly far from where I lived. But that's really, I really hadn't considered a whole lot of schools, because I think I saw that info about SCAD very early in my junior year, and I had pretty well decided to go there by the end of that year. So, that summer before my senior year, we paid a visit to my aunt who lived in Georgia at the time, and we drove over to Savannah to check the place out and all that. So, it was pretty well decided that that's where I was going. And, I was very, very fortunate to get money from the state of Illinois, which I probably shouldn't have gotten, to go to an out-of-state school.
Sure.
Yeah. So I didn't have to pay a lot of the school out of pocket. It was expensive back then. It was probably $25,000. I think that was probably with room and board a year. So that's probably seems like nothing. I know I just saw a tweet about it the other day where I think it's like $42,000 a year now.
Yeah, that's state school money now, Tracy.
yeah. I don't even know if like the 42 includes like housing and stuff. So you were able to get in. What was the sequential program? What years were you there, and kind of who were the professors, or kind of how big was the sequential program at that point? I don't think it was terribly big, and I don't think it was terribly well looked upon, generally speaking. Whether it is these days or not, I don't know. I don't really visit SCAD like I maybe should, or interact with it as an alumni probably ought to, I suppose. I don't know. Again, I'm just busy with other things in life. But
well, I know all these faculty, and they would be thrilled to have you involved. But so when you were there,
they're welcome to invite me to come and do anything at any time.
Good.
I'll get to another story in a minute. But while I was there, I was from 97 to 01. Bob Pendarvis was one of the professors who had initially created the program. Mark Neese, who I think might be about one of the only guys still left there.
I think you're right.
He was there. James Stern was one of my professors who went to found the Center for Cartoon Studies in Vermont. He was one of my professors. I can't remember. There's a couple other guys, but
yeah. And then, like, how many students would you say? Like, it was I mean, obviously, it was a smaller department compared to.
I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. Maybe 50 to 100 kids. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's probably on
That's
the
probably
outside.
Right.
You'd seen about basically the same group of kids in most classes for sequential, so
yeah,
it wasn't a huge and diverse group. It was pretty diverse, yeah. It wasn't huge.
What did you think of? I mean, so having a kind of a formal education in sequential storytelling. I mean, there's lots of different opinions on whether you should go to college for any number of things and have different types of training versus just networking and nose to the grindstone, and just kind of putting stuff out there and all of that. What would you say you kind of gleaned as a benefit from that time and in school and being around professionals or would-be professionals during that time of your life?
Well, the major benefit, now I'll give you some of the spiel that I usually kind of have worked up for kids at conventions that ask me whether they should go to art school and things like that.
That's me.
Yeah. It's like, the general thing I will say to anybody is that if you can afford to do it, then do it. Sure. Yep. If you can't, then don't sweat it. I mean, I think the biggest benefit you get out of art school, specifically a place like SCAD, is that you can learn in a focused environment that's kind of difficult to do. It would be a lot more difficult to do on your own if you had a 9-to-5 job. You're trying to teach yourself after hours and stuff like that. If you're in a class with other people who are doing the same thing you're doing, but you're meeting kids from all across the country and even other parts of the world, from different backgrounds and cultures and everything else that have learned different styles and have different influences and things, you're gonna learn stuff from them just from being around them and seeing what they're doing.
Just the personal growth of a liberal arts education, you get so much. But
but also specifically, like, just that definitely, you grow as a person. Yeah. But you also, you see techniques and you see different things that you probably wouldn't have thought about on your own. And you're there. SCAD specifically, has gorgeous facilities and all kinds of, very expensive equipment that would be difficult to get your hands on, on your own, scanners and computers and things like that, that cost a lot of money. So, you have those at your disposal while you're there. And yes, of course, there's, your professors. You have, I'm sure they all have some background and experience in the comics industry, various degrees or from various places. So they're going to know what's what. And, they have I'm sure they still do at the Editors Day, where they bring in editors and various professionals from the industry to give seminars and portfolio.
This year was, I think, the biggest Editors Day they ever had, and it was actually because of the pandemic. They did it all virtually, and so they were able to send out a lot more invitations and be able to accommodate a lot more. So Editors Day is still, I feel like, probably one of the premier benefits of having that SCAD connection.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, when I was in school, the internet was still in its infancy. I mean, email was kind of a newfangled thing. They had a little tiny little computer lab in the dorm, where you can go and check your email with these really slow old computers.
Same.
And they had the big giant zip drive storage devices. That's what we used. 1 gigabyte of
jazz drives.
One gigabyte of storage, massive, But
massive. So much money.
Yeah, like $50 or something for one of those.
So much money.
So, my point there is that with this, like we're doing right now, there's no limit to who you can have in your classroom talking to your students now.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a fantastic thing. And what a place like SCAD will have is, connections to get those people to come and talk, and I actually, yeah, I mean, like the first year, I think that I started working on Sonic, they had me in for one of those, it wasn't Editor's Day, it was the other thing they do, the SCAD, there's like a week where they have professionals come in. I forget what it's called now.
I do too, but because they haven't done it in a minute. But yes,
Yeah.
it used to be a big deal where they would have like kind of a week where they, like you said, brought people in to
Yeah,
lecture.
when I would come in, do little workshops with the students and things. So yeah, they had me like nobody there among with all these industry veterans, But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, so you went to school, you were around these different students, who were around these professors who had different levels of industry contacts, and Tracy's going to be right back with us. I'm going to start counting it down. But because what I'm really interested in at this point is 3, 2, 1, there you are. And so, no, you're all good. But I was curious. So we kind of did a little bit of a jump from being a student to being a featured alumni. What was the, if you remember, was Sonic what you kind of consider your break, like of getting like published work and kind of getting your foot in the door, or was there something?
Well, it's funny. I'll go back a little bit with SCAD. I mean, you definitely, you're taking classes like life drawing 1 and 2. We have, the nude models and the clothed models and various things that, again, your average person is probably not going to, want to do on their own or not going to have access to, depending on who they are.
With Craigslist now, you can get anything.
Sure. Most people just wouldn't think to do that. You got a lot of foundations to things, color theory, various drawings, 3D design, 2D design, stuff that's not necessarily 100% involved with comics per se, but all that stuff is going to make you a better artist in general.
100%.
So, those are real benefits. And I will say, as a lot of people will say, you can get a lot of that stuff at other schools, for a lot cheaper. Learn those foundations things, just make 100% sure that your credits are going to transfer, because SCAD is a private school. So a lot of times credits don't transfer from other schools. So if you want to go that route, that's a very smart way to do it, to get your basics out of the way at a cheaper school. Just be really careful, do your homework, and make sure that those credits are going to transfer to SCAD. Otherwise, you're going to end up spending, thousands of dollars for nothing. Yeah, I mean, it's good practice, I guess, but you can do it for free.
Yes.
So yeah, James Sturm had one of the best exercises, and I always recommend this to every artist who wants to do comics, but any artist in general improve, is to get a sketchbook. This was for like drawing for sequential art 1, I think was the class. He said, get a sketchbook, just a little one. Doesn't have to be just big, massive sketchbook, but every day, fill up about 3 to 5 pages of your sketchbook with literally anything you see. Everything that's around you, in your house, out on the street, wherever you go, take it with you. Because when you're drawing comics, more than anything, you never know what you're going to draw. You never know if you're drawing Superman. He could be on a city street in Metropolis. He could be on a farm town in wherever he's from, Smallville. He could be in outer space. It could be the future. It could be the past, or whatever. So you never know where you're going to need to draw a car. You never know where you're going to need to draw buildings or people or kitchen tables. If you're drawing a slice of life comic about some people sitting in a diner, you got to know how to draw, a diner set. Hey, there's my alarm. You want that
I love that. Oh no, Tracy, it's a Sonic sound. No, you can't get away. You can't get away from anything.
Oh yes, I have this. All the Sonic sounds are my ringtones.
Oh
and all that stuff.
I'm so glad you love this, or you've accepted this.
Yeah, and that little boing boing sound, that's a nice annoying one for an alarm. It's like, I gotta shut that off.
Oh my god!
Really get you to pay attention to it. So
we've already gone over our regular amount of time, so you're being so patient. But yes,
sure. Like I said, I can, and I'm happy to talk about comics and stuff forever. A small digression, like I said, I went in talking about SCAD in general. A few years after I had left, was graduated, I went in to try to get a job as a professor. And I don't have a terminal degree. I don't have a master's, so they're basically never going to hire me unless I get that. Although when I was in school, they made plenty of exceptions for that. There, and again, they'd have some very talented people.
Yeah.
Paul Hudson was a gentleman who worked, as a Disney Imagineer, and he worked for NASA designing stuff. He was phenomenally talented, and he wanted to teach comics at SCAD for some reason. So they allowed him to get his bachelor's degree while also teaching, or excuse me, to get his master's degree while he was teaching.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if he can do it, why can't I? And I don't really see why not. But I'm digressing a little bit. And I even kind of forget the point of that. But yes, the point was I went in to speak to a class.
Yeah.
And again, it was supposed to be for 15 or 30 minutes or whatever, detailing the work that I had done. I talked to him for an hour and a half or something, so I can go on about comics forever and ever. To move on a little bit after SCAD, you talked about getting my break in comics.
Well, you consider that to be really the turning point from, okay, I've gone to school, I've had this dream, to, okay, I can be a professional in this.
Well, I mean, I'd like to say, I don't mean to be conceited or whatever. I've always kind of felt that it was only a matter of time. Nice. I'm confident in my abilities, and I figured that when I was ready to do it, I could make it happen, and did.
I think that's incredibly important, to believe that you can achieve something, no matter what that is. There's a fake it till you make it mentality, or I already am doing that thing. I'm not getting paid what I want to get paid for it yet.
Sure, maybe there's a component of naivete to it, thinking you're better than you are. But I'm sure that I did. I'm sure that I thought that I was better than I was. But I was always fortunate as a child. Nobody ever told me that this is a pipe dream, or that I couldn't do it, or whatever.
Good.
Everyone always said, "Oh yeah, you'll be a star," and I was like, "Well, okay, I will." So, and what a star, But I mean, I've got into the field. I got into the field that I chose, and I've made it work.
Yes.
So it does take self-confidence. It takes people to help you. No man is an island. I didn't get where I am alone, and nobody does. So I've had people helping me along by the way. My mother driving me to SCAD every year, and high school counselors helping me do all the applications and stuff. Social workers or whatever helping me get money for school.
But what was the kind of that bridge? So was Sonic a tryout? Was it something you sent in?
It's really funny. My career kind of just took off all kind of at once. I graduated in 2001. I took a year off because I was pretty tired of school and things. I basically just worked on one of the riverboats downtown there, Savannah, as a glorified janitor, deckhand, tying up the boat and keeping it clean. And I did that for about a year, and then I went back to Illinois to do grad school of sorts. I had kind of thought about pursuing music, even though I had no background in it. So I wanted to see if that was something I could do, and it wasn't. I definitely didn't have the background for it. So I was like, well, that's not a good idea. Yeah. So then I got an internship at Walt Disney World in Orlando, right?
Nice.
Working there, I was just a grunt working in the park in the Tomorrowland go-kart thing. And I did that for about a month, and I said, this sucks, and I quit. And luckily, I had a friend of mine from school, PJ Tamayo. A shout out to him. He was living there in Orlando. That's where he's from. He was working at Universal as a caricature artist. Although I'll say, he had the in on that, but I just went there myself and showed him what I had, and they let me work on stuff for a little while until I was ready to go out in the park. I did that for about 5 or 6 months, and that sucked, and I quit that job. I will say though that it was fun. If you ever want to really test yourself, doing characters in a theme park is very difficult work. Like, you're on the spot, you got to perform, and it's hard. And nobody wants a caricature. They always want a glamour shot. As soon as they sit down on the chair, they're like, "Make me look pretty." And as soon as they say that, nothing you can draw will satisfy them. That's what you get. That's what you get 99 out of 100 times. But occasionally, somebody will come up and say, "Make me look, really ridiculous," and then they'll love it. So that's fun. But so then I moved back to Savannah. So I worked with my friend Nate Bowden, who I mentioned before. I worked on a comic again with Nate and Steve. That's what it's called, Nate and Steve. It was just a silly action vehicle comic. Nate wrote the scripts and I wrote the stories. We did 3 issues of that, black and white, 24-page black and white comics that we printed up ourselves, ash can style, folded it, 8.5 by 11, printed in a local shop there in Savannah. I worked at Parker's on Drayton Street there in Savannah during the day. And
the fancy Parkers.
Yeah, the fancy Parkers, that's what it's called now. It's called, yeah. And I stayed up all night drawing those Nate and Steve books, and we would take them to like Orlando MegaCon and Heroes Con and stuff, and get the little tables in Artist Alley and sell those books. And most people didn't pay attention to it or whatever, and we sold a few books to make our gas money back, and that was fine. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the real point of it was, as I tell kids too, is that, doing that work in my own free time, as you will have to do, because no one's going to pay you to do this until you can prove that you can do it. So you have you just have to make a comic or some comic pages. You don't have to do a whole finished book, but it helps, because I could literally hand a book to an editor and say, look, this is what I've done, and it shows, it's proof that I know how to do it and that I'm willing to do it. So that is, a really useful thing that any prospective artist can do in their own time. Again, it might take you a lot of time. It took me about 2 years to do 3 issues of that book in my spare time, and I didn't sleep, but maybe 2 or 4 hours a night while I was doing that. And then I got some work, professional work, so it was probably about 6, 7, 8 years I didn't ever sleep, and that's taking a big toll on me now. It's not very smart to do that.
Yeah. It trains your body to do something your body is not capable of keeping up with. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So being a Sonic fan, like having that background, loving those comics, it kind of being a gateway in a lot of ways to comics for you. Like you said, X-Men had all of this other back lore with Sonic. You were familiar with the games, and you're able to basically get it on the ground floor with that miniseries. What was that approach for you? Was that something that you actively pursued, or was that
not really? Not really. Yeah. When I was in 2001 after SCAD, I did send in a little 5-page submission to Archie. I never heard back from him, and that's fine. I didn't really think anything would come of it. But I, as a matter of fact, I hadn't read the book in a lot of years, and I just happened to see it on the shelf at one of the local shops and said, "Wow, they're still making this book." Yeah. So I that's when I did the submission, and again, that didn't go anywhere at that time. But as I was saying and digressed a bit, I was working at Parker's. We did those Nate and Steve books, and that was one of the keys that really got my career going. We would go to those conventions, and it's a mix of things. We go back to what we talked about in SCAD. One of the benefits of SCAD is at the time Tokyo Pop was a thing, as you recall. Their main line of business was translating Japanese manga, selling it in America. And until they around that time, was it 02, 03, 04, they decided they were going to start producing their own original graphic novels in America, manga style, So they went to SCAD looking for artists, and I will be unkind. They were looking for cheap labor that they could exploit, and that's the truth of it, and that's fine. But those of us who got those gigs, we had a book on the shelf that we could point to and say, this is this is a book. We do technically. Nate Bowden and I worked on that book, writing Shotgun for Tokyo Pop. We got that gig. And we got that gig again, largely through a friend of ours, Sophie Campbell, who currently works on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and who did Gem and the Holograms and stuff.
Was Sophie a SCAD connection too? Was Sophie a SCAD connection too?
Yeah, she was a good friend of ours all through that school. So she got us she got a gig with them doing a zombie book, and then she's like, "Hey, look at what they're doing." And I had a rudimentary Nate and Steve website built, with Dreamweaver back then. Yeah, man. So they could see that, So there's a whole lot of things kind of coalescing here. We had our connections from SCAD, through the school itself. We had our contacts with our friends who were talented in getting into the business. I had me and Nate had taken the time to write and draw scripts and shop them around a bit with the comic books, Nate and Steve. we actively looked for those opportunities. We didn't necessarily just wait for them to show up.
Yep.
So, we had that work ready to show. So we got the Tokyo Pop gig, Riding Shotgun, in the middle of 2005 is when that came into fruition, and we started working on that book. I had I had just started, like I had a chapter, 10 or 11 or 12 pages or so done, and we went to MegaCon in Orlando.
Yep.
I believe it was '04, I want to say. Late '04 or maybe, I don't know. I don't recall. Anyway, it doesn't.
It's late '04, but it doesn't matter. Tracy will be right back. I think you guys have stuck around long enough to know this is what we're doing. Here we go. We got Tracy back. We were at '04. We're in MegaCon.
Yeah, we were in MegaCon. Yeah. Again, this is another. This is like what I personally I call myself a follower of Christ. I'm a Christian. I believe in a God that has plans for us. We don't have to follow those plans. We don't have to believe in it. He gives us opportunities. We can ignore them or not. That's my viewpoint. Nobody has to agree with that at all. But I think God put me in the right place at the right time, because I was in Orlando. This guy that I knew from SCAD, another shout out, Marlon Shoup, an acquaintance of mine from SCAD, and BJ Tamayo, he knew him. He was walking around the show. I think it might have been the year that we all bunked in the same place, like hotel or whatever, but he was just kind of wandering around the show. And I was drawing some little doodles of Sonic in my sketchbook that year while I was, I had my Riding Shotgun stuff there at the table and the Nate and Steve books and all that. But he was walking around and he happened to look in my sketchbook as I was drawing the little Sonic doodles, and he goes, "Oh, I know the editor on Sonic the Hedgehog, and he's looking for new artists right now." This was when the Sonic X TV show was on the air, and Archie was going to put out a Sonic X comic book, which they did. And so he gave me his contact information. After I got off work at Parker's one day, I emailed him and I sent him some, scans of my Sonic drawings, and he liked what he saw. And he says, "Well, here's the sample script. There's 10 pages." And he says, "Go ahead and draw 5 of these pages and get it back to me." He liked that. So I drew a couple more, and he liked what I was doing. So then he offered me to do an issue of the book, right? He started me. He wasn't going to, he initially wanted me for Sonic X, but he put me on issue 160 and 161 of Sonic the Hedgehog. Those are the first 2 issues of the book that I drew. And then he also put me on issues 5 and 6 of Sonic X. So I drew those. And then they came at 5 issues. The Sonic X issues hit the stand first. Those are the first published books that I had. I have that on my wall over there. It's the only, like, one of the few comics and pages that I've kept.
That's
the very first
great.
one.
Yeah.
And so then after 160 and 161, Mike Pellerito, who was the editor at the time, he had just hired Ian Flynn to do the writing.
Yeah.
He says, "Yeah, you want to keep doing this?" And I said, "Of course." And so I did for like 10, 12 years with Archie. Yeah. So
that is a pretty epic run. And I know you hear this at cons and everything. I'm sure in Twitter, and I'm sure people reach out to you, but the Sonic comic was, for me as a reader, I wasn't reading, all ages. I was getting into gritty whatever at that point, but for so many people, for a whole generation of people, that run on Archie for Sonic was their formative, like, comic experience. That was you going to the spinner and being like, "Oh, cool, I like Sonic." But it was amazing to me how many people as young adults would come in and start a poll for Sonic and just be like, "This book was my childhood. Like, this is what made me fall in love. This is what made me want to be a comics artist. This is like, it is a huge, like, foundational part of so many people." And that's a really, when you think about that kind of kismet, like you said, if you believe in like intervention or, like you said, following a plan or whatnot, your history with this and how it's been able to kind of spill over and influence people in a way that it influenced you, if not even more profoundly in some ways with these young people. It's just how these series of small uninterconnected events end up to you being able to invest your time and your skill and your your life vitality. I know you're super tired and you've got a lot of deadlines you're working on right now into this thing, but to have that kind of intangible payoff that maybe you don't even, like when you're sitting there, especially early on, churning out pages and doing this work, you never, I mean, I would think that you wouldn't have thought, oh, well, in 10 years, there will be comic artists coming up to me saying that, oh, my Sonic work is what made them fall in love with comic books.
No,
What is that, to kind of not be like super, other than just be, I'm incredibly humbled, but is there something that you kind of feel, a contribution there that, and how you kind of fit into things in a really interesting way?
No, well, I mean, it is cool when you, like you said, when I go to shows these days and I have young people, walk up to me at my booth and they'll say, your comics, I read them when I was a kid,
Yeah.
That makes me feel old, but it's also
yes.
really, really cool, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
The other thing is that current kids are also able to read your comics, so you're just going to feel older and older. But
but it's great. I love to think that people enjoy what I do. I mean, it adds a much bigger piece of satisfaction to know that I'm on a book that people care about and read. I could put out my own stuff, and that's, as I mentioned to you earlier today, one of the big stumbling blocks in doing my own personal projects has just been the idea that who's going to care, and maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, and that shouldn't be what it's all about. It should be for myself, of course. And if I had more time, I probably would invest more of my own time into developing something on my own, but that's difficult to do when I've got bills to pay and a house to run and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, like you said though, the idea that I, work on a book with a character that's known around the globe.
Yeah. And that's also, it's interesting because it's not your character, but
it's not my
you
character
become
at all.
so associated with it for a whole class of people. It's big enough to have.
Sure, yeah. To think that out of all the people on this planet, that I have been given the opportunity to work on that book that everyone enjoys, that I grew up looking at, and playing the video games for. What are the odds? What are the odds?
What are the odds that book has continued in one form or another? So many kind of get rich quick. There were Pac-Man comics. There were comics about the Atari Force and whatever else. None of that stuck around. But Sonic has had even without like a current game in the zeitgeist to drive new readers, it has continued to be a sought-after book,
Sure, I think, in there, the late 90s, the very late 90s, the comic was pretty much the only game in town for Sonic, there wasn't anything in the Saturn area, Sega Saturn and stuff like that. And I think, Sonic is just he's a universally well-loved character. He can appeal and does appeal to a wide range of people, various walks of life and various mentalities. I mean, he's just something that a lot of people look at and say, that's cool, and they like it. And I think a lot of the the driving success of the comic book specifically was that he is, he's got a broad, cool attitude kind of character, and he doesn't, and the Archie books did a lot of crazy stuff with him. You talk about convoluted continuity. There's a lot of that in the old books too.
Oh my gosh. Yes, the Sonic online fan community, it does not take long dipping your toe into that to realize it is a multifaceted universe unto itself of people keeping up various continuity strands and fanfic and everything else. It is a very devoted fan base in lots of different areas.
Sure, and it's, the genius of, Ian Flynn, and also for Mike Pellerito for hiring him, is that he really knows Sonic, and he understands the lore and the characters as well, just about as anybody can. And he has a real skill at putting these disparate things together and making them work, from the old comics, from the games, all this stuff. And he gets it all. He loves it all. He knows how to make it happen. So it's been a real pleasure to work with him and draw these books. And again, like to put out something that people really enjoy. Like I said, it's been an extreme privilege. It's really, I mean, I know that sounds corny, but it is. It has been a fantastic and unique privilege to be able to do this for as many years as I have. I mean, how often and how long do people work on the same book for 15 years?
Yeah.
I mean,
what has been your experience? I love talking to artists, especially artists who have to kind of like work on model with licensed properties. What has that? I'm sure it's changed over the years with obviously different publishers. And I'm sure there have been different representatives from Sega who have to approve things over the years and that sort of thing. Like overall, what has your experience been in terms of working on model as a challenge and an opportunity for you as an artist?
Well, it's funny too. I mean, like that is a challenge at times. I think in the olden Archie days, Sega, you like said, they would have different liaisons that would work with Mike and the various editors. And they would, Mike and those guys would send the stuff to Sega of America and or Sega Japan, and they would approve everything. And I don't think a lot of the time they were too strict about being on model and things like that early on. Now that I work with, IDW, I think Sega takes a much more close look at things, and they're like way more specific about like the slope of people's foreheads and tiny little details on their shoes and things like that. And that's fine. That's their property. They should, they should take care of it. I think at times, I personally think they might be getting a little overbearing with it, but again, it's their toys. So we got to play by their rules.
Oh, Kate Sharon has a wonderful story about My Little Pony and the size of their pupils with one particular Hasbro reviewer that I adore. And you're right. It is their toy, and you're playing with their toy box, and they have to understand. They have to be happy with the way it comes across. Yeah.
But I was very fortunate, and I'm again just flattered in a lot of ways that kind of when I started with Archie, though, I was given basically a free reign to do mostly what I wanted. I kind of redesigned the proportions and style of a lot of the characters, like Sally Acorn. And this might seem like a small thing to some people, but I mean, I also, in my mind, I prefer to see all the characters have a homogeneous design, look to them. Yeah. Like all the characters in the games have big feet, big hands. They're all the same kind of proportion as Sonic. But in the old characters from the DIC cartoons, like Sally and Rotor and things, they had much more different American style animation designs. Tiny little hands. Some characters had 3 fingers, some had 4. There was even like plot points about that in the comic. Boy. In the old, before I came along, they're like, why even address that? Why not just change the design? It's not. I mean, that's one of the strange things about like characters like Wolverine and Batman and whatnot. You can make changes to their costume, and it's not a big deal. They can always put on the old one again or whatever. You can make their faces look entirely different. It's still
not their anatomy.
Yeah, I mean, if the character looks like Hugh Jackman or if he looks like Danny DeVito, it doesn't matter. It's still Wolverine.
It's still Wolverine.
I mean, but
the Wolverine with 4 arms would not be Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly. But like things with the Archie Sonic, I kind of felt like Sonic, the soles of Sonic's shoes are kind of boring, just lines, right?
Yeah.
That's the official design. So for a long time, several years, I would draw Sonic with like a sole on the shoe that I designed. It was more like a hiking boot, and it had like a little, slot in it that he could grind on rails like he did in the video games. So
smart.
I would draw that on there all the time.
Tracy will be right back. Thank you guys for being here tonight. We're going to start answering some of your questions. So for those of you who are watching us right now, if you've got questions for Tracy, we're going to start answering those here in just a second. So keep those questions coming, and we're going to ask a couple of those. Tracy.
Sure, yeah. So to finish my thought there, nobody ever told me to do that. They didn't never tell me to
Yeah.
stop. I stopped doing it because none of the other artists ever did, and it
Yeah.
just got to be a little bit of a chore to draw those complicated shoes. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go back to the old style, official suite. So I mean, but like generally speaking, I think some of the other artists were directed to alter their style a little bit to more closely match mine, which is again very flattering that I was sort of the house style, so to speak, of Archie for a while there.
As Richard Morgan commented, best Sonic artist.
Richard, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. And Megan popped in too to date correct us a little bit, but we're past that now. So thank you.
Oh well.
Whatever we said was close. Was going to be close enough.
Yeah, I'm an old man, and my memory isn't so great. So.
Oh, trust me. At some point, it's all just together. It's so cool that you've continued to work on Sonic again through a second publisher now with IDW, contributing a lot of covers. You're doing some interiors with them now for an upcoming book. The free comic book day Sonic book this year is your cover. It's a big year for Sonic in general. This is what, 35th anniversary? Is that right?
30.
Something 30th. Yeah. I'm not quite that old. God, thank you. So 30 years of Sonic. So there's a lot of stuff coming out tied to that anniversary as well that there should be. One of the things that I always like to brag on. Early on in the pandemic, we had a number of artists, a lot of them local, do sketch covers for us. You did 3 for us. We only have the Iron Man here left. And I love it in that, it's a chance to see your work in a different genre, superhero books, like you said, superhero anatomy, that kind of traditional comic form is not something that you necessarily sought out to do. You were looking to do more, cartoony, exaggerated style work. But I just have to tell you while we're, on camera together, you do this really well. So anybody who's looking for other cover artists to do any kind of genre, whatever, let Tracy know.
Yeah, I'm always open for more work. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So you did an Iron Man, a Captain Marvel, which was a lot of fun with her spike hair, and of course the Spider-Man cover, which was gone the day I think I posted it. So and you've got great fans. This. I think I sold it to one of your regular Twitter followers when they saw that you had announced that you had contributed these to us. So thank you for that. For making yourself available to us. You were here on our opening day, which was so huge. Hopefully we'll have you back in the store more soon as things are opening up and allowing people to come back, because there's a real magic in seeing people who love your work see you in person and you do a quick little sketch for the kid or whatever. It's just a really wonderful experience to see that connection. And it's one thing if it's in an interesting way, if it's a creator-owned property or whatever, but there's something actually kind of special when it's a licensed property and it's an artist who worked on it too, because there's a sentimentality in a couple of different ways that kind of comes together with it in a way that maybe I wouldn't have originally assumed, that they're coming. People come at Sonic or they come at whatever, Superman, Batman, with all this other baggage, that's in addition to what you brought to the table. So anyway, I just wanted to give another thank you for your continued support of the store. You were definitely one of the first creators that we reached out to when we were getting started, because I personally feel that you do really fun, energetic. There's a lot of life to the work that you bring. And so I wanted to make sure that that we could bring you into this world as well. The other thing I want to point people to is your Cosmo, the Cosmo miniseries with Archie has done a lot of fun. Revitalizing that 1950s, that earlier kind of Archie alien character into a modern edition. That's out in trade paperback now. That has been a regular, very good seller for us because it is a fun, all ages, energetic. It's not like a a lot of parents will pick that up who don't want to do a lot of branded stuff for their kid, even though it's a property. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
not
but it's pretty obscure. So I think it was
yeah,
the brainchild of revamping it was kind of the idea, I think, of Vin Lavallo, editor and good friend of mine there at Archie. And yeah, he's 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 a really great guy, really talented in his own right. He does the bite-sized Archie comics now on Twitter. Oh, well, on social media, so you can see those. They're on Comixology too. They're a lot of fun.
They're great. We had a lot of fun. But that's been a good one for, like I said, parents who like, I don't want to just sell my kids like something that's going to be on a cereal box. Let me pick up something that's, like you said, a little bit more obscure, has done really, really well. But I mean, it's so weird to say that I'm surprised, and I'm just going to keep giving Tracy more compliments while he's not here. But the amount of surprise that I have on how many comics, like how many Sonic comics a small shop like us sells on a regular basis has continued to blow my mind. And I keep upping orders. Like even, like at first I was like, well, we've got a local guy working on the book, but you're not on every issue. You're not, and so, but it is continuing to grow for us in a really interesting way. And I think that's fantastic. It speaks to the property. It speaks to the work of not only you, but the other artists and writers who have continued to work and develop on the property, IDW to promote it, all that good stuff. But Sonic number 40 is out right now. The A cover is Tracy's cover. It is a lot of fun. Like this is exactly what I was talking about. It is energy. It is movement. Your eye just follows through the whole thing. It's a super energetic cover. Tracy was kind enough to come in and sign for us today. Love that. Always so appreciated. I wanted to ask a quick, we've got a couple of questions in, and then I'm going to let you go. I've gone way over what I told you I was going to.
No problem.
Colin commented from Facebook. Colin had a question about the benefits. Is there a benefit of newer artists to do fan art? And I think you're really uniquely poised to answer this because Sonic is one of those franchises that encourages a lot of fan art.
Yeah, absolutely. If I understand the fellow's question correctly, is like, does he mean like,
is it good for your exposure? Is it good for? I think in the current
fan art, can it help your career? I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's you talk about specifically with Sonic. Yes, definitely, absolutely. A lot of the people that work on it, Ian Flynn, his writings, were largely based on his own fan creations. Before that. Evan Stanley, the current artist and part writer on the book. She's done several storylines now too with the scripts, and she's done a lot of issues writing it. She's a superstar, fantastic, amazing artist. But she started out, as a fan artist too. She had her Ghost of the Future Sonic fan comic that she did for a long time before that, but it was good, and it caught the editor's eyes at Archie, I guess, and that's how she got her foot in the door there too. So it goes back to what I was saying is like, no one's going to hire you to do this job unless you can kind of prove that you know how to do it. So doing fan art is a fantastic way to hone your skills and show people what you can do, particularly with the internet now. Like I said, when I was a kid, the internet wasn't so much of a thing. But nowadays, there's a lot of new ways and avenues to show your art and, gather followings and things like that. So,
And there are a ton of artists that we're seeing get picked up on books, especially it seems like in the YA, the young adult market, that are artists that have built a following through Instagram or, through whatever their channels are. And a lot of that ends up, starting as fan art. And then, that's a unique take, perhaps. Maybe you're not just drawing on model. Maybe you are doing something a little bit different and that resonates with a different audience. Definitely you're seeing publishers like DC pick up people like Piccolo to do the Teen Titans books and stuff like that. So there's that avenue that, like you said, the internet, being able to self-publish in a very basic way, put your art in front of people, send people a link, and to build up a following is something that you didn't have at the beginning of your career. Now, of course, like everybody, you get to leverage it as a part of how you market yourself as a professional artist. What do you see? I mean, obviously there are a lot of benefits to that, but do you see like a specific way for perhaps a more established artist like yourself, how you see your platform on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I know that you like to espouse your theories on DuckTales, but apart from that, even that could be the benefit. It is just having a more casual relationship with fandom in a way. What do you see kind of your role in how you use social media as a professional working artist?
I'm not as savvy as I'm sure a lot of people are with that. There's no limit to what you can do and how you can leverage social media in terms of avenues of profit for your work, or means of showing people what you can do professionally, I guess. Like generally I use social media. I stick to mostly Twitter. I kind of like the format of it a lot. I like something about it clicks with me. And I've got a lot of followers on there that I've gathered over the years. It's a fun way to show, it's an instant way to show stuff that you're working on, as any social media is. But I use it a lot. Me specifically, I have a Patreon that I don't really do a lot for. I should spend more time on, and were I to devote more time to that, I could use my other social media outlets to promote it and gather patrons there. But I also do like individual commission work a lot of the time if I have slowdowns in other work. Or
commissions are currently closed.
Currently, they've been for a long while. I'm about 6 months behind on some of those. I've had a rough year. There's mentally getting back to things the way they should be. And I have very understanding customers and patrons. They know that it's difficult. Art is not. It's not like a day job where you go in.
It's not like a day job where you go in. I'm just going to finish that thought. It is it's more intensive. It takes up your brain. It takes up your body. It is a lot more involved than just, I'm going to sit down and knock out 6 hours of art today.
I've had other jobs, where you go in and you stock shelves and you just don't think and you get your job done. You go home,
clock in and clock out.
But art takes a lot more of your immediate focused attention, and it's not something you can just do and with half of your attention. You gotta put everything you got into it.
Well, I want to point Well, I want to point people to Yardley Art is your handle on social media. That's for Instagram and Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Yardley ART. Make sure people spell it right when they find you. Instagram and Twitter. Twitter's where you're most active. You've got the Patreon going on. You've got something really cool in the works you can't talk about, like most of our guests. and of course, there's always more Sonic in the pipeline. Is there anything that I've missed that we want to make sure we point people to who have listened in tonight?
Not really, no. Like you said, I'm working on another 4-issue miniseries that I've been very slowly picking at over the course of this pandemic. There's been no rush on it with deadlines and things, so I've been doing it at my own pace, and it'll come out eventually. As soon as they talk about it, I'll talk about it.
Yes.
And then, I'm currently doing some interior pages on Sonic the Hedgehog number 42, and I will probably be working on 44 also. So
awesome.
I just need to get my butt in gear and get it done. And I owe people some drawings. They're very big, very patient. And once I, finish up all these things that I'm currently working on, I'll take more commissions. But that's about it. Nothing else too much. I have wife and kids and pets and things to take care of too. So
I'll plug the wife and kids and pets. They're all very important. So commissions are always a great way to support your favorite artists. Following Tracy on Twitter, you're really good about letting people know when they're open and closed. So that's a good first avenue to kind of make a connection and get in touch with you. And I feel like your Patreon, obviously, for people that are fans and want to support you and your work. And I suppose that when you have time, you give a little behind the scenes and whatever else on your Patreon.
I usually try to do my preliminary cover.
Yep. I think this is the world telling us we are just about done for tonight. So we're going to get Tracy back in here, and we're going to tell Tracy good night and thank you.
Were there Yeah. I try to do like preliminary cover stuff
Yeah.
and various production work and stuff that you wouldn't normally see. I share that and other just random drawings that are fun. But were there any other questions from the chat?
No, man. I think that we had a nice group. We had a pretty quiet group, but we had some good questions come in. I really appreciate John Larison, a friend of the shop, and Colin, friend of the shop, for leaving some comments here, as well as your buddy Richard and Megan, of course, for popping in. I don't know. I think that it's always so much fun, and I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit over the course of the shop through our just casual drop-in conversations. But this is always so informative for me to get that little extra, have a chance to ask those questions. And like I tell kids all the time, so much of it comes down to that networking piece of being willing to put yourself out there, make those friends, keep in touch with people, go to things in person, show up. So much of all of these, having a career in this industry, any industry, is about showing up, and is about being dependable and about being someone that people want to work with. A good attitude goes a long way.
Yeah, I try not to rock the boat with any publisher that I'm working with. I do what they need me to do. I don't complain or make a fuss about changes or things that need to be done. I'll just get it done. The really important points there, I'll reiterate one last time for young people. If you don't have the money to go to art school full time, don't worry about it. If you can afford to go to a place like SCAD for a year or two, do that. You don't have to have a degree in art, in sequential art. I mean, I'll probably never get a job at SCAD after saying that, but you absolutely, nobody cares.
Paula Wallace doesn't listen to my podcast.
Yeah, nobody in comics cares if you have a degree. They care if you can do the work and if you have a solid portfolio. And as you said, in this business, being able to work quickly on deadline is as important as anything else. There's people that can draw circles around me. They can do better art, more detailed, sophisticated art than I'll ever be able to draw, but they can't get it done on time. So
and speaking of deadlines, I don't want to keep you up any later tonight.
I'm starting to fall into that category myself. So,
Tracy, thank you. You are really a saint for taking so long to talk with me. I really enjoyed it, and I really have appreciated myself getting to know a little bit more about your history as well. And I'm so looking forward to doing more with you in the future. You are the best. Have a great night. Give my best to your family and your pets and all those other things that we're going to plug. And we'll talk to you again really soon. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks a lot.
Guys, this has been so much fun. So much fun to talk to Tracy. So much fun to be able to share the artwork, the history of Sonic here, the kind of, the wider world of how all these genres kind of intermix. Thanks so much for everybody who contributed tonight during the show. If you want to learn more about Neighborhood Comics, neighborhoodcomics.com, at NBRHD Comics on all of the social media platforms. We'll be putting this in our podcast feed as well shortly. Thanks so much. Thanks for your support of the shop. You can always support us at shop.neighborhoodcomics.com. Check out our Pop Shop Live Sunday afternoons at 5:30. I got to go to bed. Good night, guys. Stay well.